Imagine, a podcast series by Imagine Theatre.
Hello again, how are you? Welcome to episode 15 of this Imagine Theatre series with me, Martin Ballard, with just a couple of months to go before the return of Panto for Christmas 2021.
For more information, go to their website at www.imaginetheatre.co.uk.
Now, the first thing I have to say is don't worry if you have missed any of the previous episodes. They are still available. Make sure you check them out because we've had some fabulous guests so far, from directors and choreographers to lighting designers and many of the stars of Imagine Theatre shows. Plus, there are many more to come because don't forget, Imagine Theatre is one of the UK's biggest producers of pantomime and children's theatre. Now, in episode 14, I spoke to the stage and television actor, Imagine's resident dame at the Royal Spa Centre in Leamington Spa. You may know him as his drag alter ego Mary Mac. That was JP McHugh. Now, this time, I've been joined by the stage and television comedian, star of Imagine's Panto at Venue Cymru in Llandudno this Christmas, John Evans. How are you, John?
I'm very well, Martin. How are you?
Actually, though, depending on what sort of time of day you're listening to this podcast, I should say Borodar, Pranandar, or even Nosdar, I suppose.
Borodar at the moment, mate, yes, because it's daytime, and that's about the limit of my Welsh as well, which is handy, really. I don't go out after lunchtime because I don't know what it is. I don't know what to say.
With a name like Evans, and you can't...
I know, it's a sin, really. But I did say I'm going to try and... Like I can say, or I could say a couple of years ago, now, see if I can remember, Blwyddyn Newydd Dda, that's Happy New Year, Blwyddyn Newydd Dda. It'll come back to me. But yes, you put me on the spot then. I should have really researched
impressive,
that.
Though. That is impressive. I can tell by your accent that you're a Scouser. Tell us about your childhood and where theatre first came into your life.
There was a kids' show where I live in New Brighton, which is quite close to me. And the show was called Joy Time. It also gave us Keith Chegwin, amongst other people. And Janice Long did a little bit of time on it as well. It was a kids' show in a park, an open-air show. And you could get up and do your little party piece, tell some jokes, as in my case, that's what I did, or sing a song or do a dance or whatever. So I used to enter that. I used to go in there every summer, to go in nearly every day and try and win through to the final. I never did. But then in the end, I was asked to go and be a part of it, like a resident joy timer, if you like. It's kind of like a kid's entertainer when I was about 14 or 15. So I suppose that was the first sort of inkling there. That was probably the first thing, yeah.
And what about going to the theatre? I mean, Panto particularly. Did you go and see Ken Dodd or whoever as a child?
So the first one I remember seeing was Stan Boardman at the Floral Pavilion in New Brighton. Because Panto, I was about 12 or 13, I would guess, when I went to see Stan doing that Panto. But at that same time, I'd started to do Amdram pantos when I was about 13 or 14. When you start, these Amdrams where you rehearse for like 9 months and perform for 3 days, And so I did them for a long time. The Amdrams that were rehearsed for like 9 months, they were so tight. But now as a pro kind of thing, you realise that they only get like 10 days, 12 days to rehearse it. Now I think, well, that's obviously why then. We used to do 9 months, 4 nights a week as an Amdram, and they only get like 10 days now, 12 days. But you know what that's like. So yeah, it was kind of that was the first experience of Panto. Stan Boardman at the Floral Pavilion.
Well, it's interesting because I started about the same age in Amdram pantos as well. And I have to say, I don't know whether you agree, John, but it's a great sort of training ground, isn't it?
Oh, listen, it's fantastic. Well, I was doing clubs then as well. I started working men's clubs and things as a stand-up when I was about 14 or 15. And then somebody took me under their wing and said, why don't you do this Amdram panto? You learn a lot from doing that. And I did. So at 14 or 15, I was learning such an awful lot. And then when I came to do it years later, professionally for the first time, I felt well equipped. So yeah, you do learn a lot from the Amdram side. It's great.
I've never seen Stan Boardman in panto, but I've seen him doing stand-up.
Yeah.
His style was very different, very cheeky, little twinkle in his eye.
Yeah.
What was he like in panto?
He was great, very similar really. He had a great knack, or he did have when he was doing it, of being able to do that thing where, you could entertain the kids and also the mums and dads and aunts, uncles and grands and granddads. He seemed to be able to do that, which I think is important as a comic within a panto cast. you've got to try and get everybody involved, and he always seemed to be able to do that.
I didn't realise you'd started in the working men's club so young, and that must have been at the time when working men's clubs were closing and there were less opportunities. How did you get on in that career?
I knew I wanted to perform, and I at the time I wanted to be an actor, and so you needed an equity card at the time, and the easiest way to get an equity card was to show equity that you were performing, and the easiest way to perform was just go on and just tell a load of jokes for half an hour. That seemed so easy when you're back at 14, 15 years of age, collecting contracts in order to send to equity to get a card. So I used to walk around the clubs, Liverpool, Birkenhead, the Wirral, all around there, and literally just ask to go on, to get a contract. And that was sort of the start of it, really. And so they were sort of dying out a little bit at the end, at that time. But I think also when you're 14 or 15, you're fearless, you know what I mean? So you just sort of rock up and say, let me go on and have a go. And again, lucky without knowing it, it's great grounding.
So what was your style as a teenager, and obviously possibly very different to your style today?
I don't think I had one, to be honest with you. Because you just kind of go on and just, fumble your way through kind of thing when you're young like that, because you've got no life experience. So you can't talk about anything that people would identify with. So it's just a case of telling jokes, one after another. And I was just trying different styles. I used to try madcap styles for a while, like Billy Pearce kind of thing, that kind of quick fire off the wall stuff. And then I tried clever stuff like Dave Allen. You just try and find your own sort of niche, but it doesn't come from it. It takes a long time to find it, really.
And while you were performing on the road and doing the various clubs, were you always on the bill on your own, or were there other comedians with more experience you could learn from?
No, I was always on my own. Sometimes once I got to like 18 or 19, I was a redcoat at 18, 19, and then I used to work with comics then, because I was given a job to host in a bar at the end of the hotel, the Butlins Hotel. I was hosting Compare in there, so I worked with comics then, and I was often taken under the wing by a lot of comics then and said, don't do that, try this, and leave that gag out, don't do that, and pointers, so that was invaluable, really. It was great.
Yeah, it's interesting because I guess you probably have been influenced by so many different comedians over the years. Do you remember, particularly when you were starting in those teenage years, who were your favourite comedians?
I'd only ever seen comics when I was a kid who stood and told jokes to the audience, right? And then when I started working in Blackpool and seeing comics 5 or 6 nights a week, I started to see comics who went into the audience and started talking directly to the audience. Comics like Mike Lancaster or Hal Nolan of old, and you think, that's a whole new thing altogether. Look at that, that's amazing. And so that took me down that route, seeing those types of comics. And so I think you sort of like, you learn a lot from those. And again, there's a different style you see again, from the comics that you see night after night.
Yeah, the other thing that comedians have always said, I think, is when you actually get a television break, you can actually tour, tweaking a show, doing one-nighters and so on for a couple of years. But once that's been on television, your actor's gone because everybody's seen it. Now, you were in The Comedians, weren't you? Which was just one of the most popular programmes of its time, wasn't it?
Well, it was amazing to be part of that, because when I was, again, going back to when I was a kid, long time before I did any sort of stand-up, I'd have been about, 11 or 12 when the first few series of The Comedians was on in the 70s, mid-70s and late 70s. And I watched it and thought to myself, that's what I want to do. I'd like to do that. So to be part of it, I think I did it in 1992. And to be part of it was, what a thrill. It was great, it was such a fantastic stepping stone. It was invaluable, really. It was great.
The best comedians of all time were all appearing on that programme. And
it was terrific.
To be on there is an accolade in itself, isn't it?
It's something I'll never forget. I can talk you through the whole day, if you've got an hour, which we haven't. I could talk you through the whole day of what happened and what I was thinking and what I was feeling, and it was just amazing to be a part of it after watching it all those years as a kid, and then suddenly be a part of it. It was great. And it was such a handy stepping stone, because suddenly, you did that little bit and then you had your own little showcase then of things that you'd done on telly, and you could show people and say, this is what I do. then you get trusted a little bit more, don't you, to move on and do other things.
People like Charlie Williams became famous overnight. Bernard Manning and Colin Crompton and others, had some fame anyway. And of course, the Wheel Tappers and Shunters was around at the same time in the 70s. Yeah. But then as the series evolved over time, they introduced new comedians every season, didn't they?
That's right, yeah.
You must have done a good job, though, because you feature in the video release the best of the comedians, don't you?
I know, yeah. The best of the comedians, yeah. I'm guaranteed to make you laugh or your money back. That was a thrill to be amongst the great comics, and the people on that. It was wonderful. I've still got a copy of it somewhere if you want to buy one.
Well, I was going to say, how difficult was it to do? Because I don't know whether you had a studio audience or not.
We did. It was filmed over about a week. Yeah, Monday to Friday they filmed it. And there was about 6 comics on every night. We went in lunchtime on the day you were going to film, and you went through what you were going to do. So you made sure that you weren't going to clash with the other comics. And then the warm-up man was on, and the warm-up man was Ted Robbins for the night that I filmed. And it was fantastic. You just do it, and you did your 25 minutes, and then from that, Granada took that 25 minutes and cut it up and put it in amongst 5 or 6 different episodes, And
it really opened up careers for so many people. I mentioned Charlie Williams. Les Dennis was in...
Yeah, Les Dennis was in it. Dennis was in it.
And Mike Reid, of course, who went on to EastEnders and other things. Yeah. Did that really help your career then? Because we talked about the demise of the working men's clubs, but by this stage, other areas were opening. I know you've done a lot of cruise work, for instance.
Well, the cruise work came as a result of the TV exposure that I got in the early 90s. I did the comedians, and then I did a small slot on a Jonathan Ross thing, and then I was asked to do a show in Bournemouth. I was asked to compare it, and there was cruise bookers there, and so it was one of those things that these things that happen, and people talk about them happening, but it really happened. There was an act supposed to go on, and they weren't ready, and I was only supposed to be comparing. So the guy who'd organised the showcase, my agent at the time, said to me, look, can you go on and just cover for 10 minutes because the act isn't ready? So I said, okay. So I went on and filled in for 10 minutes. And the bookers weren't supposed to see any of my act. And suddenly it was like, quick, get on, sending the clowns kind of thing. And I did 10 minutes. And then from there, I think about 3 weeks later, I was flying to Hong Kong to join a ship sailing from Hong Kong to Sydney, my first ever cruise. Just bizarre, that way things happen. There you go. It's one of those amazing things.
Well, they say every cloud has a silver lining, and the demise of working men's clubs meant that you could literally travel the world, really, didn't it?
Yeah, I've been lucky. Listen, this job owes me nothing. Somebody somewhere will knock on my door and say, there's been a mistake, you need to go back to your van, because I used to deliver scaffolding and tool hire and things like that, and they're going to say, you need to go back to the van. There's been a mistake. It shouldn't have been you having this nice life. You should have to go somewhere else and do it. But I've been very fortunate. I've been all over.
Yeah, and I know as well as obviously the cruises and the various countries that you visit on cruises, you've spent a lot of time entertaining the troops, haven't you?
Yes, I was lucky enough to go out to. I went over to Belize and the Falkland Islands, and I did a couple of tours in Northern Ireland as well for the troops. That was great. They were fantastic, and that you earned your corn then, because those guys, they really do work for a living. So when they see some smart guy going on with his suit saying good evening, they think, yeah, we'll show you, mate, what a real job is. So you're left with no uncertain terms how it's gone. They were great. They were good days, those. Yeah, really good.
So when did your first professional panto come along?
I did a thing in London Weekend Television. Again, a small TV thing, and it was an audition in front of a live audience. And then there was a knock on my dressing room door as I was getting changed, and this man came in. He said, "Good morning, my name's Paul Elliott." Now I didn't know who Paul Elliott was at the time, and of course he was a huge pantomime producer. I had no idea. He said, "Would you like to do pantomime for me?" And I said, "Yes, okay." I made no big thing of it. Just said, "Yeah, fine. Just contact my agent." And then a few weeks later, we went to see Brian Connolly in Jolson. And above Brian Connolly's name and Jolson and all that, it said, Paul Elliott presents. And I went, oh, right, he's quite important then. So, and that was my first one. And he put me into Basingstoke first with Hinge and Bracket, was my very first one. What did we do? Was it Jack and the Beanstalk? I think it was Jack and the Beanstalk. And it was fantastic. But again, I have to say, I was lucky to have done all the ones I did as an amateur, as a kid. Yeah. Because I kind of went in with a bit of armoury, knowing I wasn't totally floundering, do you know what I mean?
Would that have been when the company was known as E&B?
That was E&B, yeah. That was before Kudos. I did a couple for them. They were very loyal, very good. They were lovely to me. I went from Basingstoke, I did Belfast, and then I did Bournemouth. I think I was doing it alphabetically. I didn't quite get to Carlisle or Dumfries, but it was. I did Basingstoke, Belfast, and Bournemouth. First ones for Kudos, well, for E&B rather. But yeah, it was great, and I learnt a lot. I really did.
So, how different was it to the amateur pantos that you'd done before then?
Well, in terms of hard work, physical hard work, it's incredible. I always say, doing panto, I'm the only person who loses weight over Christmas. Everybody puts weight on, don't they? When you do 2 shows a day, it's like full on. And I noticed that first of all, because I can't do anything half cocked. You know what I mean? Everything I do, I've got to do it at 1,000,000 miles an hour in panto.
Yeah.
Because I think kids get onto that. The cartoon type feel of a panto. And so that's the way I try and do it. So physically, it was difficult because you're doing it twice a day rather than just, 3 or 4 times in the week, of that week that you're on as an Amdram.
I think you're right. The energy is absolutely is vital. And like you, I always lose at least half a stone over Christmas.
It's incredible.
And I don't know whether you agree, but you tend to eat at ridiculous times of the day.
Yeah.
You probably eat more than you would normally, and yet you lose weight. It's a great diet, actually.
Another thing, it is a great diet. Another thing as well, I find that you tend to, when the panto finishes, you ask any comic or singer or acro or anybody who's taking part in a panto, that's when the panto finishes, that's when they get ill. All through December, people have got sniffles or bad chests or a sore throat. We never get that because the adrenaline keeps you going, and then once it finishes, your body goes, right, okay, I've got 5 minutes to just be ill now, just have a Christmas sniffle, or December sort of bad chest or whatever. So yeah, it's incredible, it really is. But physically, that was the main thing I noticed, the physicality of it all.
I tell you what I was going to say to you as well. Obviously, the best audiences are in Llandudno, but you've played all over the place. So
yeah.
Does it vary in the response that you get in different cities?
I don't think so. I think everybody comes to panto with one thing in mind, to have fun. And I think wherever you go, I think you'll always get that sort of feel of people coming in to want to have fun and to enjoy it. And as long as you hit the ground running, so you get that 100 miles an hour feel and you're full of energy, which sometimes is difficult. Some days, you think, I'm so tired. But you just, suddenly you go on and that old Tacona phrase, it's twee, but Dr. Footlights, that kind of thing kicks in, doesn't it? So I think it's pretty much the same. I've never noticed a difference, really. Some audiences are a bit more vocal than others, and a bit more sort of kind of, well, go on then, show me, that kind of attitude, but not in a bad way, not in a nasty way. They're just kind of like, well, go on then, bring it on. Let's see what you've got. But yeah, it's in a good way, then it becomes like a bit of a, right, okay, it's a challenge, let's go together and we'll see what we can do, that kind of thing.
Now, anybody who doesn't work in panto or the industry in general will think, well, how do you do the same 4 or 5 titles on a rotation year on year? Well, firstly, no 2 shows are ever the same, are they? But also,
no.
You get to work with so many different people. You work with some famous names. You've worked with all sorts of different speciality acts and so on.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the joys, isn't it?
It's fantastic. I mean, everybody that you work with will bring something different to it. I mean, one of the first people I worked with way back when was Robin Cousins. And so E&B set up a small indoor ice skating rink. It was Beauty and the Beast. And Robin did this most amazing ice skating routine in the middle of the show. I used to bring the house down, fantastic. And more recently, I was with Shirley Ballas at the Liverpool Empire a couple of years ago for her first panto. That was Jack and the Beanstalk. She'd never done it before, and it looked like she'd been doing panto for 40 years. She was so good at it, and she brought so much to it. So, yeah, Gareth Thomas, rugby player,
yeah,
he brings his own brand to it. It's so each person who works with you makes it a different experience, It's fantastic, it really is.
And you play the comic. We've spoken in previous podcasts about the relationship with the dame, and you've worked with some great dames, John Inman to name but one.
Yeah.
The dynamics going to be slightly different each and every time, but the chemistry between the two is really important, isn't it?
It is important, and I've been blessed to work with some fantastic dames. All of them have been great. John Inman, as you mentioned, was just so generous, wonderful, and I learnt an awful lot. And I just thought, I'm going to be like a sponge, and he just taught me everything I worked with Nigel Ellicott a lot. He's a wonderful dame, real traditional dame. Stuart, I worked with last year, a couple of years ago at the Empire. He was great. I've been blessed. They've all been fantastic. You know, they have been really great. But the working relationship is important. That's a huge part of it, because obviously more often than not, dame and comic is mother and son, isn't it? You know, in the script. And if you can hit off that, if you can get that straight off the bat, or within the first couple of days of rehearsals, you're flying. It's great, and it's a great feeling, because I sometimes I work with a dame and I think I know where he's going with this.
Yeah.
Just let him go there and do it. And equally, the dame will look at me and think, yeah, I know where he's going. Let him do that. You know, and then new things are born in the show all the time. It's great when you work with a great dame. I've been lucky. I've worked with people, you know, fantastic ugly sisters. I've worked with them, and they've been superb. I've worked with great dames, and I'm kind of like getting to that point now where people are saying, John, is it time for the frocks? When? You know, and I'm thinking, God, that's hard. That's a hard gig, that, to get it right. So I'm always in admiration of the dames. I really am.
Well, this year will be my 31st, and I have to say that people underestimate what it takes, and, you know, any dame will tell you they do as much work off stage in the wings with quick changes and all that
quick
sort of
changes,
stuff.
incredible. I mean, you know, Nigel Ellicott is a prime example of that. He has many different I don't think you see him in the same dress twice, you know. And sometimes his exit and entry can only be 45 seconds. He's off and on, and he's changed. And you think, how the hell did you do that? You know. So yes, I'll hold my hands up and say dames are fantastic. I'm in awe.
Would you do it though, John?
I will do it. Yeah, eventually I will do it. I'd like to do it sooner rather than later. I know that sounds crazy, but I'll tell you why. Whilst I still can throw myself around a little bit, I'd like to be quite a physical dame.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm 6 foot, so I can't, I'm always going to be a bloke in a dress, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I'd love to do a physical dame, you know, like a Billy Dainty type dame.
Well, listen, I hope you do. I really would. That'd be great to see, and the audiences would love to see you. How many years have you done Llandudno?
Well, I did 10 years in Llandudno, and then I moved across and did a few years at the Liverpool Empire. But in total, I did 10 years consecutive, and then I did the 3 years at Liverpool Empire, and now I'm going back, and I can't wait. It's going to be great. I'm so excited. The
audiences love you there, and they will be desperate to see you back there again. What's the panto this year?
This year's panto is Aladdin. It's one of my favourites. It's a great panto. It's got a bit of everything, you know. It's got some excitement and the love story, and you know, so it's going to be fantastic. It really is, and I'm looking forward to getting back. And I've been really lucky and blessed in all the pantos I've done. But Llandudno's, it's a special place for me, that, because the audiences there are so warm and so welcoming. You know, from day one, my first year, it was like, you know, hit the ground running, and I thought, yeah, this is a nice place to be. Even when you're not doing the panto, it's a nice town, you know. 3 final questions. Okay. John, I've asked everybody the same 3 questions. The first is, what is your favourite panto title? Do you know what? I'd have to say Peter Pan. I'll tell you why. I love playing Smee. Smee's a great part. He's lovely and daft and a real typical sort of comics panto character. But I would say the best villain, Captain Hook, is the best villain. Mm-hmm. He is absolutely... And that's the one... If I was ever going to come away from playing comic in panto, I would play Captain Hook in a heartbeat. I mean, I'd love to get hold of a comedy Captain Hook. Do you know, if there's one about, or a script with a comedy Captain Hook, I'd love to have a go. I really would. Okay. I'm always jealous when I see the guys playing Hook. I think, oh yeah, that's a great part. Some traditionalists would say, yeah, it's a great show, but there may not be a dame in it. It has to be written in, and if there is no dame, then it's not a proper panto. But yeah, I've done Peter Pan a couple of times, and one with a dame and one without, and everybody loves it because everybody knows the story. There's lots of comedy in it. Yeah, it works, doesn't it? I think it does work, and the good thing about Peter Pan is, if you do it right, as everybody, you know, I've only ever done fantastic effects with Peter Pan. The people who look after the effects, that first time when you see Peter fly in, you know, looking for his shadow in the playroom, it never ceases to make the audience gasp when he flies in. You know, it's always lit right, and we know it's done on stage. We know how it's done, but if it's always lit right, so the kids can't see it, and they're like, "How's he done that? He's flown in," and then he flies back out again. And I love it. Stand in the wings and watch that every time. And that first couple of goes, I think, yeah, we've got you. So yeah, I see what you're saying about the dame. And it isn't necessarily, people would say it's not, but it's got a lot of aspects, a lot of elements make it a great panto, I think.
Panto's got so many elements, you don't need all of them in one show to make it work. You can leave some out, can't you?
Yeah,
now, talking of flying, when was it not all right on the night?
Okay, well, this now, when you said to me, it could be like something that you would laugh at. You wouldn't laugh at this, right? When I was 15, one of the first amateur pantomimes I did, I forget what it was now, what panto it was, I can't remember. But at the very end of the show, I was playing comedy baddie with another comedy baddie, Big Bad Bob. I remember that much. And he got at the very end of the show, we didn't know this was going to happen. He got a custard pie in his face at the very end, and we all had to fall flat on the stage, face down. So I'm lying face down on the stage, if you can imagine. There's three of us, Big Bad Bob, me in the middle, and another baddie to the right of us. And then I was laughing at Bob, mouth wide open, laughing, looking down at the stage. And what was supposed to happen was the pantomime donkey was going to come running on and run over our backs, finish us off. But the pantomime donkey, because he was into the suit and the two guys and everything, couldn't see. And they stepped on the back of my head and my teeth smashed on the stage.
Oh.
Get a load of that.
Yeah.
They are.
You can laugh about it now.
I can now,
but
yeah.
at the time, that must have been incredibly painful, but meant a trip to the hospital, presumably.
I'd had loads of dental work done. When you're 15, I'd had loads of dental work done, and the dentist really kind of done really wonders with my teeth. And then I smashed him with this pantomime donkey, and I couldn't bring myself to tell him. So I said I fell off my bike. But it went to the press. The press got hold of this fact that this kid had knocked his teeth out, the pantomime donkey, and it was in the Daily Mirror, I think. It was like a little small half a page, pictures of me and all that. And then when I went back to the dentist and I told him I fell off my bike, he'd seen this, and the papers had asked me who my dentist was, and I told the papers who the dentist was, so they'd been in touch with him. So when I went back to the course of treatment to rebuild my teeth again after the pantomime donkey had smashed them out, he said, "Did you fall off your bike or was it a pantomime donkey?" I was like, "Oh God, no, it was a donkey." So yeah, that's when it went wrong. And I still had one more performance to do, and I had to do it with no teeth.
It's a great story. I bet there's nobody else who's ever lost their teeth by being kicked in the head by a pantomime donkey.
It's just the worst thing in the world. And when we finished the show, I smashed my teeth. Then I had to do the walk down, and all the adrenaline's going, and I didn't think I'd broken my teeth. And then I went back to the dressing room afterwards, and the cartoon when Tom and Jerry, and he runs into a wall, and his teeth all just shatter and fall out like that. That's what they were like. They were just all coming out. It was vile.
Look, I don't know how many pantos you've done over the years now, but the final question has to be, why is panto so special for you, John?
I think we're given a gift, as performers in pantomime. And I don't care how twee this sounds, it's true. You're given a gift because you are the custodians of the first visit to a live theatre for many kids. And a kid can be sat there in the auditorium and think, even now in this day and age of video calling and, Zoom and whatever, Teams or whatever it's called, or Xbox, and we can paint some scenery up and put some fancy costumes on, and they can be transported for an hour and a half or a couple of hours to a different land and totally get wrapped up in the story. So to be able to do that for kids is a gift. So it's important that we keep doing it because it entices new people into the theatre as well. So I think it's important to do it from that, and that's why it's important to me. I think it's very important.
I mean, it's really important this Christmas more than ever, as many pantos didn't happen, of course, last year.
No.
How's the last 18 months or so been for you?
It's been very difficult. I mean, I've been fortunate. More fortunate than many. My wife worked all the way through. She's a nursery worker, and so she worked all the way through. So we had an income coming in, but there was people who didn't have an income, didn't qualify for any support. So I was extremely fortunate. I really was. Although whilst it was difficult, and I felt at some points you think, I'm never going to get back to this. This is never going to get back to any sort of normality. But touch wood now, it looks like we are entering a period where we're going to go back to normality. So. But yeah, it was difficult. But I think people had it more difficult than I did. I was very lucky.
Well, fingers crossed that things do continue to get better. I know that you've been doing some cruise work and so on up until Panto. Wish you all the very best in Aladdin at Venue Cymru in Llandudno this Christmas. John, thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you, mate. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure. And I'm afraid that's about it for now. But as I said at the very beginning of the episode, there are many more fabulous guests still to come. Please subscribe through your favourite podcast app and make sure you join me, Martin Ballard, next time for episode 16, when I'll be joined by writer, actor, producer and director Will Brenton. I'll see you then.
Thank you for listening to the latest edition of Just Imagine, the podcast series from Imagine Theatre. And you can find out more by going to www.imaginetheatre.co.uk.